As you might expect, these cases have prosecutors and plaintiffs and the former president's legal team all scrambling. Neama Rahmani is a former federal prosecutor. He is now a defense attorney and also the president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers. Neama, I want to remind our audience that all of this is a result of this day in U.S. history. 1,146 people have been arrested for what they did on that day. 657 have already pleaded guilty or have been sentenced, several convicted of seditious conspiracy. The officers who stood their ground on January 6th fear the foot soldiers will go to jail, but the ringleaders won't. Should an alleged ringleader be allowed on the ballot?
Well, Del, I believe in the prosecutions of Donald Trump, but he is not being prosecuted for engaging in an insurrection. Neither Jack Smith nor Fani Willis or anyone who's handling the 2020 election fraud cases has chosen to prosecute the former president for insurrection, unlike the folks who actually stormed the Capitol building or others like the Proud Boys. So it's a question of, can the former president be kept off the ballot without some sort of legal determination? Of course, that's happening now in Colorado and Minnesota. So it's going to be very interesting to see how those judges rule on this issue.
So, Neama, it is safe to say that he has not been convicted of an insurrection because he has not been charged. But as you know, the wheels of justice move slowly, and there is the possibility that when all is said and done, he could be charged. So that being the case, if then he is charged and he is a sitting president, how do you put that genie back in the bottle?
Well, if he's a sitting president, he is not going to be charged with anything because the Department of Justice has long held that no sitting president can be prosecuted for a crime. He or she would have executive immunity. But it would be interesting to see if at some point a prosecutor decides to actually file insurrection charges against the former president. So there's a lot of interesting legal issues here, and this makes constitutional scholars and historians very happy because you're going back to a Civil War era amendment that really hasn't been applied except for a small number of times in the past 100 years. There's issues of standing. Who can bring a 14th Amendment challenge? Is it another candidate? Is it members of the state who vote for president? So that's one issue. And the second is this something that's appropriate to be handled by the courts, or is this something that Congress and the legislature should handle? So there's a lot of very nuanced and novel legal issues that judges are sorting through. And as the report said, this will certainly end up in the Supreme Court one way or the other.
As you were speaking, I was looking at those images from January 6th. I was there that day. If the 14th Amendment isn't upheld, does that then make a mockery of everyone who puts their hand on a Bible or religious book and swears to defend the Constitution? Because after all, the United States Congress was being attacked. There was a constitutional process underway. The president took an oath to uphold and swear and defend the Constitution. So even if he's not charged with an insurrection, there is ample evidence that he did nothing to stop the assault on Congress.
I believe in the prosecutions of the former president, but there's certain crimes that are much more easily provable. The classified documents case, trying to overturn the elections. When it comes to insurrection, obviously the former president said to fight like hell. He didn't call off his supporters when they were storming the Capitol building, at least not in the beginning. But there are witnesses who are testifying in this case that the former president called on the National Guard on January 6th, that he tried to keep some of the more fringe individuals like Alex Jones away from the Capitol that day. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it, but this is far from a black and white issue, and which is why prosecutors who have really undertaken the unprecedented step of actually charging a former president, none of them have been willing to go so far as to charge him with insurrection.
These 14th Amendment cases could very likely, as you heard in the package, make their way to the Supreme Court. What do you think will happen with regards to the courts? Even if justice will not indict a sitting president, what does the courts do? What will the courts do if these cases finally make their way to the Supreme Court in the instance that Donald Trump is the president?
I think this is a bit of a long shot argument because it has to make its way through multiple courts. And let's be honest, Del, we're dealing with conservative judges, especially at the Supreme Court level. I mean, they have a 6-3 majority. I would be hard-pressed if I were making a prediction today to think that those justices would disqualify Donald Trump from appearing on the ballot. They would probably punt this issue and say this is a political issue, not a legal one, and justices and judges shouldn't get involved in deciding who is on the ballot and who's not.
Neama Rahmani, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.